So surprisingly, I actually really enjoyed Renfield. I think it's such a hilarious movie. I mean, you know what you're getting yourself in for when you watch this movie. In terms of, it's a bit of a B-level film that won't necessarily blow you away. But what I did really like is that the 1930s movie based on the Dracula character, this film does feel like a bit of a continuation of that one, which is really, really cool. And I mean, it is a bit of a travesty that, Universal were trying to create their dark universe of classic evil characters. But because of The Mummy with Tom Cruise, because that film absolutely plummeted, they kind of just changed tact and started to do standalone films. And I have always thought that, the dark universe, the concept of having a bit of a shared universe with all of those characters, with all of the brilliant actors that they did originally have planned for that series, it really should have been more successful than it was. But anyway, back to Renfield. I think this movie starts off really, really well in terms of setting everything up, in terms of explaining the backstory between Renfield and with Dracula, and to see that, Renfield has been Dracula's servant for so long. And they definitely play a lot on the whole master-servant relationship, and especially so in terms of the Renfield character going to a support group. And I just thought that aspect was absolute genius, especially as, a lot of people can relate to having a narcissistic boss or being in a narcissistic relationship and being a codependent because of that. And just the way in which Renfield is trying so hard to break away from it. And that really heartbreaking scene, if you look at it from that perspective, between when he's trying so hard to use all of the tools against Dracula, but Dracula just throws it away as a true narcissist would do. And I just think it introduces and creates the vampiric underworld and the darkness of all of the things that vampires get up to in terms of sucking people's blood and using this for their energy, and just the energy source of using bugs instead for Renfield to get similar level powers. I thought was really, really wicked. And, it does know its tone. So it just dives straight into it with all of the gore, all of the blood, all of the guts, all of the blend of comedy and horror together just works really, really well. I mean, Universal now have this formula down to a T. Of course, with Megan, with Sea Bear very recently, and of course with Violent Night as well. I feel like, they are just churning it out really, really well. So let's go through all of the actors now one by one. So Nicolas Cage, I was surprised that actually he is in this movie a lot. I did think it would have focused a lot more on Renfield and a lot less on Dracula, but I'm really surprised, pleasantly surprised, that they did actually focus a lot on Dracula, and his story arc throughout this movie is really, really good, especially the disappointment that he feels towards Renfield, and he really does feel like a master that thinks that he really does own Renfield, and he's just so dark, but deliciously dark, as he just blends the comedy and horror together so well. And now he's really, really iconic now in this performance, and he really does set himself apart from a lot of other people that have similarly played Dracula. And I just think he acts so well in this movie. Like I said, he literally throws himself into it, and you just are with this character through and through. Then we have another Nick, this time Nicholas Hoult, who I have always held in high regard from his early days in Skins. Nicholas Hoult is honestly one of the best actors in Hollywood, and he just does such a good job in this movie. Firstly, he bounces off every single character, Nicolas Cage, Ben Schwartz, Awkwafina, all of them. He bounces off them all really, really well, and has very distinct relationships with all of them. And even though he does do a lot of dark things for centuries, you are surprisingly with this guy as he is dealing with all of the emotional and physical abuse that Dracula has bestowed upon him. And because of that, I feel like, he is actually a really, really good lead character, and is also pretty hilarious. He has got some brilliant one-line delivery in this film, but not only that, he's got some brilliant action sequences as well. Absolutely loved the action sequence where he is just fighting off a lot of bad guys in the apartment block. Like I said, there are a number of them, and Nicholas Hoult just steps up the plate for every single one, and he is just such a good lead character and lead actor in this film. Another actor that I also hold in very high regard is Ben Schwartz, and he absolutely nails it as always in this role. I think he was absolutely brilliant, of course, voicing Sonic the Hedgehog, but also in the after party, where he really did show that, he can bring the comedy and horror aspects really, really well. And over here, he is playing an evil guy, and he just does it in a bit of a Ben Schwartz way, and it just works really, really well. And as the movie progresses, I love how they are building the rivalry between him and Nicholas Hoult. If anything, I would have loved them to have done that a little bit more, as it had the recipe to be absolutely brilliant, especially in terms of the final time in which these two characters face face off each other. But what I did really love is some of the one-liners. Like I said, Nicholas Hoult has brilliant one-liners that he has against this character. For example, saying, look, why are you setting us up as rivals? We've only met each other, what, like twice? And Ben Schwartz's character's mother is a true mafia boss woman, and she is just so good in that role. And if anything, like I said again, I would have just loved them to have just built that world up a little bit more, as Ben Schwartz's character, along with his mother, were just so interesting. Now, I do love Awkwafina. I think she is so funny and was just really, really good in Raya the Last Dragon, and of course in Shang-Chi, and of course also in Crazy Rich Asians, and everything else that she has done. But I just wish that they would have written her character a little bit better here. Firstly, she has zero chemistry with Nicholas Hoult's character, so I think that love interest storyline really just doesn't go anywhere. But from a buddy cop perspective, I do think that they work really, really well. But what I would have loved is for them to have just built the emotional stakes that this character is fighting for, as you do want to root for her, but I just feel like, you know, the world in which this storyline is sitting in, along with the tone of it being comedy horror, just doesn't really work as well from an emotional beat perspective. But it's just really unfortunate, as it could have meant that this character would have been really elevated even further. But that being said, with the material that she does have to work with, I do feel like Awkwafina is really, really good here. I would have loved a couple more action sequences with her, but like I said, given the material that she does have, she does do a really good job. Speaking of all of the fight sequences, there is so much blood and gore in this movie. It does rival the blood and gore that you do see in The Boys. And, you know, I would have loved them to have just spent a bit more money, as they really could have elevated this movie even further. But it does feel, like I said right in the beginning, as a bit of a B-level movie. But what I do love is that they were able to pack in quite a lot in the 90-minute runtime. Like I said, they could have expanded and developed things a lot further if they did run for a little bit longer. But if you just want a bit of a fun horror comedy 90-minute movie, then I think you're really going to enjoy Renfield. And I just feel like Chris McKay and Robert Kirkman behind the scenes just put this film together really, really well. And one thing that absolutely does come across on screen really, really well is the fact that you can tell that all of these actors are just having an absolute blast, and in return, the audience are right there along with them and having an absolute blast in this film as well. So even though it could have been improved somewhat, but the final product that this film is delivering is actually really, really good. And so for all of those reasons, I'm going to give it a solid 7 out of 10. Now, I'd love to hear what you thought of Renfield, so please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in my next video.